Story 1. The small town of Tyner was nestled in a valley surrounded by thick, ancient woods, a place where the sun rarely broke through the dense canopy of leaves. The townsfolk lived simple lives, their routines punctuated by the whispers of the forest. It was said that the woods held secrets, dark and twisted, and that those who dared to venture too deep would not return the same more sometimes, not return at all. At the heart of Tyner stood the old library, its wooden facade weathered and worn. It was a relic of a bygone era, filled with dusty tomes and cobwebs that clung to the corners like forgotten memories. The library was run by Mrs. Abernathy, an elderly woman with a penchant for storytelling. Every Saturday evening, she would gather the children of Tyner around the fireplace, spinning tales that danced between the realms of the ordinary and the extraordinary. One particularly stormy night, as rain lashed against the windows, a group of children huddled close to the fire, their eyes wide with anticipation. Mrs. Abernathy, her voice barely audible over the howling wind, began to recount the tale of the wraith of Eldergrove, a spirit said to roam the woods in search of lost souls. The children listened intently, their imaginations ignited by the flickering flames. As the story unfolded, the wind outside howled louder, rattling the windows as if the very woods were protesting the tale being told. The air grew thick with tension, and the shadows in the corners of the library seemed to stretch and twist as if alive. Mrs. Abernathy's voice took on a haunting quality, weaving a spell that pulled the children deeper into the narrative. The wraith, she explained, was once a kind-hearted woman who had lived in Tyner many years ago. Betrayed by those she loved, she had sought solace in the woods, only to find herself consumed by darkness. Now she wandered the forest, her wails echoing through the trees, beckoning the lost and the lonely to join her in eternal sorrow. As the story reached its climax, a loud crash of thunder shook the library, and the power flickered before plunging them into darkness. The children gasped, their hearts racing, and in the silence that followed, the sound of soft footsteps echoed from the back of the room. The children turned, their eyes wide with fear, but it was only the old grandfather clock, its pendulum swinging steadily, marking the passage of time in the stillness. Mrs. Abernathy cleared her throat, her voice steady despite the darkness. Sometimes, the stories we tell can awaken things that should remain undisturbed, she whispered, her eyes glinting in the dim light. Remember, children, the woods are not just trees and shadows, they are alive with memories, both beautiful and terrible. With the storm raging outside, the children were reluctant to leave. They lingered in the library, sharing their own stories of the woods, each tale more chilling than the last. As the hours slipped by, the clock struck midnight, and one by one they began to head home, the weight of the night pressing heavily upon them. Among them was Clara, a curious girl with a wild imagination and a penchant for adventure. As she stepped outside, the rain had lessened to a drizzle, and the moon peeked through the clouds, casting an eerie glow over the town. Clara felt a tug at her heart. The stories of the woods were calling her. Against her better judgment, she decided to explore the edge of the forest, her curiosity outweighing her fear. With each step into the woods, the familiar sounds of Tyner faded away, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the distant call of an owl. Clara ventured deeper, the trees looming above her like ancient sentinels. She remembered Mrs. Abernathy's warning but dismissed it, her adventurous spirit urging her on. She wanted to see the wraith, to understand the fear that gripped the hearts of the townsfolk. As Clara walked, she felt an unsettling presence, as if eyes were watching her from the shadows. She pressed on, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Suddenly, she stumbled upon a clearing bathed in moonlight, the air thick with an otherworldly energy. In the center stood an ancient oak, its gnarled branches twisting toward the sky like skeletal arms. Clara approached the tree, drawn to its presence. She reached out to touch its bark, and in that moment, a chilling wind swept through the clearing. The atmosphere shifted, and Clara felt a cold breath against her neck. She turned, heart racing, and there, emerging from the shadows, was the wraith. The figure was ethereal, draped in tattered white garments that flowed like mist. Her face was shrouded in darkness, but Clara could feel the sorrow emanating from her. The wraith extended a hand, her voice a haunting whisper. "Come, child, join me in the shadows where the lost find solace." Clara's instincts screamed at her to run, but she was entranced. There was a sadness in the wraith's presence, a longing that resonated deep within her. "Why do you wander?" Clara asked, her voice trembling. The wraith's form flickered, and for a brief moment, Clara saw a glimpse of the woman she once was, beautiful and full of life. "I was betrayed," she replied, her voice echoing like a distant memory. "I sought refuge in these woods, but the darkness consumed me. I am bound to this place, forever searching for those who can understand my pain." Clara felt a pang of empathy. She took a step closer, but the wraith recoiled, fear flashing in her eyes. "You must not linger, child. The woods are hungry, and they will take you if you allow them." In that moment, Clara realized the truth. The woods were not just haunted, they were alive with the stories of those who had come before. The wraith was a vessel, a guardian of the lost, and Clara could either join her or escape the grasp of the darkness. With a surge of courage, Clara turned on her heel and ran. The wraith's wails echoed behind her, a haunting melody that filled the air with despair. She sprinted through the trees, branches clawing at her skin, the darkness closing in. Clara could feel the weight of the woods pressing down, but she pushed herself harder, her heart pounding in her chest. Finally, she burst through the tree line, the familiar sight of Tyner welcoming her back. She stumbled onto the main street, breathless and shaken. Clara looked back, half expecting to see the wraith following her, but the woods stood silent, their secrets hidden once more. The next morning, Clara awoke with the sun streaming through her window, the events of the night feeling like a dream. Yet, the weight of the wraith's sorrow lingered in her heart. She knew she had to share what she had experienced, to warn others of the dangers that lay within the woods. Gathering the children of Tyner, Clara recounted her tale, her voice steady and clear. The children listened, rapt with attention, and as she spoke, she saw the flicker of fear in their eyes. They were captivated, but she could also see the curiosity bubbling beneath the surface. Mrs. Abernathy was right, Clara concluded. The woods are alive with stories, but some stories are best left untold. We must respect the darkness and the spirits that dwell within. As the children dispersed, Clara felt a sense of purpose. She had faced the wraith and lived to tell the tale, but she knew that the woods were ever watchful. The stories of Tyner would continue, weaving through the fabric of their lives, and she would be their guardian, ensuring that the darkness remained at bay. Years passed, and Clara grew into a young woman, her bond with the town deepening with each passing season. The library became a sanctuary for her, a place where she could connect with the stories of others. Yet, no matter how far she ventured into the world, the woods of Tyner remained a constant presence in her life. One evening, as Clara sat in the library surrounded by books, she felt a familiar chill in the air. The shadows danced on the walls, and she knew that the wraith was near. This time, however, she felt no fear. Instead, she rose from her seat, determination coursing through her veins. She had learned to embrace the darkness, to understand the stories that shaped her existence. With a heart full of courage, Clara stepped outside into the cool night air. The moon hung high above, illuminating the path to the woods. She walked to the edge, where the trees loomed like guardians of forgotten tales. "I'm here," she called out, her voice steady. "I want to listen." The wind rustled through the leaves, and for a moment, Clara felt the weight of centuries upon her shoulders. The wraith emerged from the shadows, her form shimmering like mist. Clara could see the sorrow etched in her features, and she stepped forward, unafraid. "Why do you haunt these woods?" Clara asked, her voice soft. "What do you seek?" The wraith regarded her with a gaze that pierced through the darkness. "I seek understanding, child. I am bound to this place. but I can teach you the stories that lie within. Will you listen? And so Clara became the keeper of the tales, a bridge between the living and the lost. The woods of Tyner whispered their secrets to her, and she wove them into stories that echoed through the town. The children gathered around her once more, their eyes wide with wonder as she spun tales of bravery, betrayal, and the delicate dance between light and dark. As the seasons turned, Clara shared her knowledge, teaching the next generation to respect the woods and the spirits that resided within. The wraith became a part of her stories, a symbol of the struggles that shaped their lives. Tyner thrived, the bonds of community growing stronger as they embraced the shadows that lingered at the edges of their world. In time, Clara became a figure of legend herself, a storyteller whose tales transcended the boundaries of fear. And as she stood beneath the ancient oak, the wraith by her side, she realized that the darkness was not something to be feared but embraced. For in every shadow there existed a story yearning to be told, and Clara was ready to share them all. The town of Tyner remained forever changed, each whisper of the wind carrying the echoes of the past. The woods, once feared, became a sanctuary of understanding, a place where the stories of the lost and the living intertwined. And as the stars twinkled above, Clara continued to weave her tales, ensuring that the legacy of Tyner and its haunting beauty would never fade into silence. Suddenly, the doll's eyes glowed with an eerie light. "Free us," it murmured, and Lucy felt a wave of sorrow wash over her. The dolls were not merely toys, they were trapped souls longing for release. In that moment, Lucy understood the curse that bound them. Summoning her courage, she placed the doll back on the shelf. "I'll help you," she promised, her heart racing. The dolls paused, their whispers fading into silence as they awaited her next move. Alara, realizing Lucy's intent, nodded solemnly. "You must find them." The dim glow of her phone illuminated the darkened room, casting shadows against the walls as Mia scrolled through her Tinder matches. It was a Friday night ritual alone she had embraced after her recent breakup. The thrill of meeting someone new, the promise of connection, and the occasional rush of danger kept her swiping, even when her instincts whispered caution. Tonight, she matched with a guy named Alex. His profile was simple: a handsome smile, a few adventurous photos, and a bio that read, "Looking for someone to share late-night talks and spontaneous adventures." He seemed charming. They exchanged messages, and within an hour, they had made plans to meet at a quaint coffee shop downtown. Mia arrived early, her heart fluttering with anticipation. The coffee shop was cozy, with warm lighting and the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee. She ordered a latte and settled into a corner booth, her eyes scanning the door. When Alex walked in, he was exactly as he looked in his picture stole, athletic, and wearing a leather jacket that made him seem effortlessly cool. "Hey, Mia," he greeted with a smile that made her feel instantly at ease. They chatted easily, sharing stories about their lives and laughing over shared interests. But as the evening progressed, Mia noticed something off about Alex. He had an intensity in his gaze that lingered a little too long, and his laughter seemed to mask an underlying tension. After an hour, they decided to take a walk. The streets were quiet, the air crisp with the chill of autumn. As they strolled, Alex began to share some personal stories: his childhood, his family, and his passion for photography. But then, the conversation took a turn. "Have you ever felt like someone was watching you?" he asked suddenly, his tone shifting. Mia felt a chill run down her spine. "I mean, really watching you. Like, not just from a distance, but like stalking you." No, not really," she replied, trying to laugh it off. But Alex's expression was serious. "I used to have this girl who was obsessed with me. She would show up everywhere I went. It was terrifying." Mia forced a smile, her instincts screaming at her to be cautious. "That sounds intense." "Yeah, but it got worse," he continued, his voice low. "One night, I found her outside my apartment. She was just standing there, staring at me. I called the cops, but by the time they arrived, she was gone. They thought I was crazy." Mia felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She glanced around, suddenly feeling exposed in the darkened streets. "That's really scary, Alex," she said, trying to steer the conversation away. "What do you like to photograph?" He waved her off, dismissing her attempt to change the subject. "You don't understand. It's not just about photography. It's about capturing moments, feelings, and sometimes people." Mia's heart raced as she considered the implications of his words. "Right," she said carefully, "but it's just a hobby, right?" He nodded, but the intensity in his eyes didn't fade. "Sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes it's about creating a story, about finding the truth." They continued walking, but Mia's mind was racing. She decided it was time to end the evening. "I should probably get going," she said, glancing at her phone. "I have an early morning." "Sure, I understand," he replied, but there was a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. "Can I walk you to your car?" As they approached the parking lot, Mia felt a sense of relief. She could see her car, a small blue hatchback, waiting for her. But as they reached it, Alex stepped closer, his demeanor shifting again. "You know, I really enjoyed tonight," he said, his voice low. "But I feel like there's so much more to discover. Can I see you again?" Mia hesitated, her instincts screaming at her. "I'm not sure," she replied cautiously. "I think I need some time to think about it." "Think about it?" he echoed, his tone darkening. "Why would you need to think about it? We had a great time." "Right, but—" Before she could finish, he leaned in, his face inches from hers. "You don't get to just walk away, Mia. Not after tonight." The words hung in the air like a threat. Mia's heart pounded as she fumbled for her keys, her fingers shaking. "I really need to go," she said, backing away. "Don't do that," he warned, his voice suddenly cold. "You don't know what I'm capable of." Fear surged through her as she unlocked her car and jumped inside, locking the doors behind her. Alex stepped back, his expression shifting from anger to something unsettlingly calm. "You should really think about what you're doing," he said, his smile returning, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'll be around." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Mia breathless and shaken. She drove home, her mind racing with thoughts of what had just happened, her heart still pounding in her chest. The next few days were a blur of anxiety. Mia found herself checking over her shoulder, convinced she was being followed. She blocked Alex on Tinder, but the unease lingered. Each time she heard footsteps behind her or saw a figure in the distance, her heart raced. Then came the texts. They started innocently enough, just a message from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Alex. Just wanted to see how you were doing." Mia's stomach dropped. She didn't respond, hoping he would take the hint. But the messages kept coming, each one more unsettling than the last. "I miss you," followed by, "You're making a mistake." She reported the number, but the messages continued. Each ping of her phone sent a jolt of fear through her. She felt trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. Desperate for safety, Mia confided in her friends. They urged her to go to the police, but she hesitated. What could she say? That she went on a date with a guy who had become obsessed with her? It sounded absurd. But when the messages escalated to photos, grainy images of her walking to her car, sitting in her favorite cafe, even outside her apartment, she knew she had to act. With her heart in her throat, she finally went to the police, showing them the texts and photos. The officers took her seriously, reassuring her that they would look into it. But as she left the station, she felt a flicker of doubt. What if they couldn't help? What if Alex was already too close? That night, she locked every door and window in her apartment, her heart racing as she tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Every creak of the house made her jump. Every shadow seemed to loom larger. Days turned into weeks. The police were investigating, but Mia felt like she was living in a horror movie. She avoided going out alone, and her friends rallied around her, but nothing could shake the feeling of being watched. Then one evening, as she returned home from a friend's house, she noticed a figure in the shadows across the street. Her heart raced as she squinted, trying to see if it was him. But the figure melted into the darkness, leaving her breathless with fear. That night, her phone buzzed with another message. You shouldn't be afraid, Mia. I just want to be close to you. Panic surged through her, and she called her friend Sarah, who rushed over. Together, they stayed up late, talking and watching movies. But the fear wouldn't leave Mia. She felt like a prisoner in her own life. Days passed, and the police finally had a lead. They traced the messages back to a phone number registered to a nearby address. When they knocked on the door, a woman answered Alex's mother. She was shocked to hear about her son's behavior and assured them she would talk to him. Mia felt a glimmer of hope, but it was short-lived. That night, she received a message that made her blood run cold. You think this is over? You don't know me at all. Desperation clawed at her. She decided to take matters into her own hands. The following day, she gathered her courage and went to the address the police had provided. It was a small house, unassuming, with a neatly trimmed lawn. As she approached, her heart raced. She knocked on the door, her breath hitching in her throat. A moment later, Alex opened the door, his expression unreadable. Mia, he said, feigning surprise. What a coincidence. Cut the act, Alex, she said, her voice steady despite her fear. I know what you've been doing. You need to stop. He stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. You don't understand. I'm trying to protect you. You're the one who's in danger. I'm in danger because of you, she yelled, her voice rising. You're scaring me. His expression shifted, and for a moment she saw the mask slip. You think you can just walk away? You're mine, Mia. Panic surged through her, and she turned to run, but he grabbed her arm, pulling her back. You can't escape me. In that moment, something inside Mia snapped. She yanked her arm free and sprinted down the street, her heart pounding in her ears. She didn't stop running until she reached the police station, breathless and trembling. The officers reacted quickly, dispatching a unit to confront Alex. They found him at his home, but he was gone. The house was empty, and the police were left with nothing but an eerie silence. Days turned into weeks again, and Mia tried to reclaim her life. She stayed close to her friends, avoiding dark streets and late nights. But the fear was a constant companion, lurking in the corners of her mind. Then, one afternoon, she received a package at her doorstep. Hesitant, she opened it to find a photo of her, taken from a distance, smiling with friends at a park. There was no note, just the image, a chilling reminder that Alex was still watching. Mia felt a wave of despair wash over her. She called the police once more, but this time they were unable to trace the package. It felt like a sick game, one that she couldn't escape. Finally, after months of living in fear, she decided to take a stand. She organized a meeting with her friends, sharing everything that had happened. Together, they devised a plan to confront the situation head on. With the support of her friends, she went public, sharing her story on social media. She wanted to raise awareness about online dating dangers and the very real threat of obsession. The response was overwhelming, with others sharing their own stories, and soon, Mia found herself at the center of a movement. As she spoke out, the police reopened the case, and Alex was eventually tracked down. He was arrested for stalking, and Mia felt a sense of relief wash over her. The nightmare was finally coming to an end. Months later, as she stood in front of a crowd, sharing her story of resilience, she felt a sense of empowerment. She had faced her fears and come out stronger on the other side. Mia knew she would never erase the memories of her tender horror story, but she found solace in the knowledge that she wasn't alone. She had turned her experience into something meaningful, helping others navigate the treacherous waters of online dating. And as she looked out at the faces in the crowd, she realized that her story was just one of many, a testament to the strength of those who refuse to be silenced, who choose to rise above the darkness and reclaim their lives. The glow of her phone illuminated the dim corners of the coffee shop, its soft light casting shadows that danced across the wooden tables. Emma sat at a small table near the window, her heart racing with anticipation. It was her first time using Tinder, a decision fueled by a mix of curiosity and loneliness after her recent breakup. She had heard both horror stories and fairy tales about the app, and tonight, she was determined to carve out her own narrative. As she swiped through profiles, her thumb glided over faces and bios, each one a potential connection or a fleeting disappointment. There was Matt, the fitness enthusiast with a penchant for motivational quotes, and Sarah, the artist whose photos were a kaleidoscope of colors and creativity. But it was Jake who caught her eye, a charming smile, an adventurous spirit, and a bio that promised spontaneous road trips and late-night conversations. With a quick tap, she swiped right. The screen flickered, and moments later, a notification popped up. It's a match! Emma felt a thrill rush through her. They began chatting, and Jake's easy humor and genuine interest made her feel seen again. They exchanged stories, laughter bouncing between them like a game of ping pong. After a week of messages, they decided to meet. The night of their date, Emma stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her hair nervously. She chose a simple blue dress that hugged her figure just right. As she walked into the bustling downtown bar, she spotted Jake seated at a table, a beer in hand, and a wide grin on his face. He looked even better in person, his dark hair tousled and his eyes sparkling with mischief. They hit it off instantly, sharing stories over drinks, their laughter mingling with the music that pulsed through the air. However, as the night wore on, Emma noticed a subtle shift in Jake's demeanor. There was a flicker of something dark behind his charming facade, a hint of possessiveness in the way he leaned in too close, his hand lingering on her arm a moment too long. As they left the bar, Jake suggested a walk along the river. The moon hung low, casting a silvery light across the water. Emma felt a thrill of excitement mixed with a hint of unease. She brushed it off, convincing herself that she was just being paranoid. But as they strolled, Jake's conversation took a turn. "Do you believe in love at first sight?" he asked, his voice low and intense. Emma laughed nervously. "I think that's a bit of a fairy tale, don't you?" He stopped walking, turning to face her. "No, I think it's real. I felt it the moment I saw you." His gaze was piercing, and Emma felt her heart race not from romantic excitement, but from a sudden awareness of the danger that lurked beneath his charm. She managed a smile, trying to deflect the tension. "Let's take it slow, okay?" Jake nodded, but the glint in his eyes suggested he wasn't entirely on board with her suggestion. They walked in silence for a moment, and Emma could feel the weight of his presence beside her. Just as she was about to suggest they head home, Jake turned to her, his expression shifting from charming to something darker. "You know, I've been thinking it would be great if we could be exclusive right away. I don't want to share you with anyone else." Emma's stomach dropped. "Wow, we just met. I think we should get to know each other better before jumping into anything serious." "Why? Don't you want to be mine?" His voice was low, almost a growl. Emma took a step back, her heart racing. "This is moving too fast for me. I think I should go." "Wait," he said, reaching for her arm. "I didn't mean to scare you." But she was already turning away, her instincts screaming at her to leave. As she hurried down the darkened path, she could feel Jake's eyes on her, a predatory intensity that sent shivers down her spine. The next day, Emma received a barrage of texts from Jake. At first, they were apologetic, but as the hours passed, they morphed into something more sinister. "You're overreacting," he wrote. "I just want to protect what's mine." She blocked him, shaking off the unease that clung to her like a shadow. But the experience left a bitter taste in her mouth, a reminder of the dangers that lurked behind charming smiles. Weeks went by, and Emma decided to give Tinder another chance. She met a few guys, but each encounter left her feeling more disillusioned than the last. There was Mark, who spent the entire date bragging about his wealth, and then there was Sam, who forgot her name halfway through dinner. Each story was a reminder of the horror stories she had heard from friends ghosting, catfishing, and the occasional creepy encounter. But then came Alex. He was different, thoughtful, kind, and genuinely interested in her life. Their conversations flowed easily, and after a few weeks of chatting, they agreed to meet. Emma felt a spark of hope flicker in her heart. On the night of their date, she arrived at the trendy little Italian restaurant, her heart buoyant with excitement. Alex was waiting at the bar, his warm smile instantly putting her at ease. They shared a bottle of wine, indulging in laughter and stories, the chemistry between them undeniable. As the night progressed, Emma felt a sense of comfort she hadn't experienced in a long time. They talked about their passions, their dreams, and their past, weaving a tapestry of connection that felt real. But just as she began to let her guard down, the conversation took an unexpected turn. "I've had some bad experiences on Tinder," Alex admitted, his tone shifting. "I had a girl once who ghosted me after a great date, and I found out later she was dating someone else." Emma felt her stomach twist. "That's rough. It's hard to know who to trust." He leaned in closer, his voice low. "I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I don't want to get hurt again." Emma felt a flicker of unease. "I think it's important to take things slow, to see where it goes." He nodded. But there was a tension in the air, a possessiveness that mirrored her last experience. As they left the restaurant, Emma felt a strange sense of déjà vu. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the streets. "Let's take a walk," Alex suggested, and against her better judgment, she agreed. They strolled through the park, the night air cool and crisp. But as they walked, Emma noticed Alex's demeanor shift. He was no longer the charming man she had met. Instead, he was tense, his jaw clenched. "Do you believe in fate?" he asked suddenly, his eyes piercing. Emma hesitated. "I think we create our own paths." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "I think some things are meant to be, like us." Emma felt her heart race again, but this time it was fear. "We barely know each other. I'm not ready for anything serious." "Why not? I could be the best thing that ever happened to you," he said, his voice low and intense. Before she could respond, he stepped closer, invading her space. Emma took a step back, her instinct screaming at her to run. "I need to go," she said, her voice trembling. But Alex reached for her arm, his grip tightening. "Don't leave. I just want to protect what's mine." Panic surged through her. "Let go of me." In that moment, she broke free, her heart pounding as she fled into the darkness. She could hear him calling after her, but she didn't stop. She ran until she reached the safety of her apartment, locking the door behind her, her hands shaking. That night, Emma sat on her couch, heart racing, mind racing, replaying the events over and over. Tinder had promised connection, adventure, and even love, but all she found were shadows and echoes of fear. Days turned into weeks, and Emma put Tinder behind her. She focused on herself, rediscovering her passions, her friends, and the joy of being alone. She joined a book club, took cooking classes, and even started painting again. Slowly, she began to heal. One evening, at a local art exhibit, Emma met Sarah, an artist whose work resonated with her deeply. They struck up a conversation that flowed effortlessly, filled with laughter and shared experiences. Emma felt a warmth bloom in her chest as they exchanged numbers, promising to meet again. Over the next few months, Emma and Sarah became inseparable. They explored art galleries, shared their dreams, and supported each other through life's ups and downs. Emma discovered something she hadn't realized she was missing: the joy of genuine connection. As they sat together one evening, sipping wine and painting, Emma felt a sense of peace wash over her. She had learned to navigate the complexities of relationships, finding strength in vulnerability and support in friendship. One day, as they watched the sun set over the horizon, Sarah turned to Emma, her eyes glowing with sincerity. "You know, I think we make a great team. You've inspired me to take risks in my art." Emma smiled, her heart swelling. "You've brought so much joy into my life. I never thought I could feel this way again." With laughter and warmth surrounding them, Emma realized that love doesn't always come in the form of romance. Sometimes it's found in the bonds of friendship, in shared passions, and in the connections that uplift us. As she looked at Sarah, Emma understood that her Tinder horror stories had shaped her, but they didn't define her. She had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace whatever came next. knowing that real love, whether romantic or platonic, thrives in authenticity, trust, and the courage to be vulnerable. And as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Emma felt a sense of hope for the future, where she would continue to write her own story, one filled with connections that honored her heart and spirit.